It's Tuesday morning, December 6, 2022. I'm David Feldman, and this is the Mop Up. 40,000 residents of Moore County, North Carolina, have been left in the dark over the weekend and today after a power station was damaged by gunshots. That's how bad things are getting here in the United States. The gun nuts have run out of people to shoot. Now they have to start using inanimate objects like power stations as targets. Iran has abolished its morality police. Maybe America should give that a try. The world is in mourning this week after it was announced beloved TikTok star Noodles the Pug passed away at 14. I'm not quite sure what makes me sadder, that Noodles is dead or that he was way more popular than I'll ever be. I'll let you people figure out what makes me sadder. The 2020 Iowa caucuses were a disaster, and not just because Pete Buttigieg got 14 delegates and Bernie won 12. Tallying the results was a mess. It took 3 days to count all the votes because the Iowa Democratic Party used an app developed by a Hillary Clinton staffer, and it kept crashing. And I remember at the time there was talk of punishing the Iowa Democratic Party for all those screw-ups. Now it looks like Iowa, which for the past 50 years was the first state to award delegates, is no longer going to be first. Keeping his promise to South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn, President Biden has convinced the Democratic Party Rules Committee to vote in favor of making South Carolina the first primary in the 2024 presidential nominating process, jumping ahead of the Iowa caucuses. The change won't go into effect unless the entire party votes in favor, and that would be in the early part of 2023. Now think about this. The midterms just ended, and exactly a year from now, we will have already watched dozens of presidential debates with the primaries and the caucuses only weeks away. South Carolina always came after Iowa and New Hampshire in the primaries, and it became a test to see if the new frontrunner had the momentum to win in the South. In the past, to earn that frontrunner status, candidates would spend more than a year in Iowa and New Hampshire, which, due to all the media buys and attention, was great for the economies in Iowa and New Hampshire. Biden, however, lost to Trump in Iowa. He lost by nearly 10 points. So now it looks like it'll be South Carolina, the people of South Carolina, and not the people of Iowa who will be getting sick of the Democratic candidates, although it remains to be seen whether anyone will be challenging Joe Biden should he decide to run again. Now, do you think he's going to run again? I think so. 2023 is going to be a difficult year for the Biden family. His son, Hunter, whose history of substance abuse and influence peddling will be under great scrutiny as the House Oversight Committee, under the leadership of Republican Congressman James Comer, will torture this kid over what was found inside that laptop. Elon Musk, who endorsed Ron DeSantis for president about 2 weeks ago, he said he wants Ron DeSantis to be president. Elon Musk is the new owner of Twitter, and he released internal documents suggesting Twitter, in the lead up to the 2020 presidential elections, decided to block any users from sharing reporting done by the New York Post on the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop. While Rudy Giuliani was busy peddling the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop to the media, 50 former intelligence agency officials, including 2 ex-CIA chiefs under Barack Obama, they all signed a letter insisting they believe the emails found inside the laptop showed evidence of Russian interference. But now major news organizations like the New York Times acknowledge the contents inside the laptop were not planted by the Russians. And some of these emails suggest that Hunter Biden was engaging in some sort of pay-for-play to gain access to his father. Hunter Biden was addicted to crack as recently as, I think, 2019. So whatever he wrote in those emails is automatically suspect. And more importantly, the contents of anybody's laptop are private. Has anyone brought up the serious Fourth Amendment considerations in all this? Now, the Republicans in Congress can hold their hearings and they can leak the contents of the laptop to the press. But in a court of law, I'm almost certain Hunter Biden's laptop cannot be entered as evidence. Should it? Would you want to even go through somebody's laptop? Would you? Would you do that? Over the summer, 2 men were arrested for selling the contents of the diary belonging to President Biden's daughter, Ashley. They try to sell it to the right-wing organization known as Project Veritas. Project Veritas never published the contents because they said they weren't sure the diary actually belonged to Ashley Biden. Who would read her diary? When did something like this even become remotely permissible? So Rudy Giuliani had Hunter's laptop, and we're about to find out what was on it. Would you like your laptop read in public? So will it be embarrassing for Hunter Biden? Absolutely. But only a golem like Rudy Giuliani would think of peddling the contents of a presidential candidate's son's laptop and insist it's a scandal. The scandal is that Rudy Giuliani got his hands on the laptop. Giuliani was a federal prosecutor. He knows it's unethical. And so it wasn't that much of a leap for Rudy Giuliani to go from peddling Hunter's laptop before the election to overthrowing the results of the election after the election. Giuliani, by the way, is spending the week in Washington, D.C., undergoing disbarment hearings. The Washington, D.C. bar is holding hearings to decide whether to suspend his law license due to his efforts to overthrow the presidential election. How about suspending his law license for peddling Hunter Biden's laptop? Musk's decision to release the files proving that Twitter blocked the New York Post articles on Hunter Biden prompted Donald Trump on Saturday to claim that big tech, especially Twitter, conspired to destroy his reelection campaign. Trump then went on to call this such a massive fraud that we should suspend the Constitution and reinstate him as president. Suspend the Constitution. That's not sitting too well with Republicans who turned their backs on Trump after he dined with Kanye West and a self-professed Nazi named Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago last weekend. You know, if Republicans turn their backs on Trump any further, they'll be facing him. People say never count Donald Trump out. I've often said that, but he did lose in 2020. He left Washington kicking and screaming, but he left and he lost. He does lose. So can he be nominated? Can he win? The polling is all over the map. In some head-to-heads, Ron DeSantis leads. In others, it's Trump. Biden beats him in the general election. All the polls show Biden beating him in the general election. In terms of the nominating process, in terms of how entertaining that's going to be, I can't wait to watch the Republican debates. Can you imagine if Mike Pence decides to run or DeSantis? Who would you root for? I would love to see Trump just chew those two up. But by then, by the time the debates start, he probably will have been indicted. He's going to get indicted. The jury in the tax fraud case against the Trump Organization will spend today in its second day of deliberation. If the company is found guilty, it would probably have to pay a fine of no more than $1.6 million. But it would, if found guilty, it would, so it seems, make it nearly impossible moving forward for anyone in the Trump family to secure loans from banks or investors. That being said, Trump has always been corrupt, and there's always been a foreign bank or a criminal enterprise that needed someone like Donald Trump to launder money for them. Trump declared his candidacy right after the midterms, but he's off to a slow start, with a lot of the money donated to his super PAC now being used to pay legal fees for his top advisors. That money should be spent on building an actual campaign infrastructure, but the Washington Post reports that Trump's personal valet, as well as Trump advisor Kash Patel, have both testified before the grand jury looking into Trump's mishandling of classified documents in Mar-a-Lago. And their lawyers, Brand Woodward Law, their lawyers say the fees, their legal fees, have been paid by Trump's super PAC. Now, it's all perfectly legal to have Trump's super PAC pay the legal fees for Kash Patel or Trump's valet, but you can be sure that if they don't testify to Trump's approval, those legal bills won't get paid. And if those legal bills don't get paid, that will raise eyebrows over at the Justice Department as to whether or not Trump is buying their silence. Spoiler alert, he is. Trump is also reportedly paying the legal fees for his longtime aide, Dan Scavino, who has also been brought before the grand jury. So is Biden going to run again? Probably for the same reason Trump is running, to protect himself and his family. This next presidential election is going to be a blood sport. You're going to have Trump running, possibly with his whole family indicted, and you're going to have nonstop hearings on Hunter Biden and Jimmy Biden. And when they dig into Hunter and Jimmy Biden, that's the president's brother, they're going to find stuff. Whether it's true or not, whether it's actionable or not, doesn't matter. When it comes to politics, it's all about perception. And if Trump does get the nomination, then his jackals in the House will do to Hunter what the Democrats did to Trump. It's going to be a nasty quid pro quo. And I worry that Hunter Biden is missing the shameless gene that the Trump family was all born with. I worry that Hunter might not survive what's about to happen to him. This is why I've said countless times, Joe Biden should have disqualified himself back in 2020. He should not have run. He should not be doing this to his son. He knows what Washington is like. It calls his judgment into question that he would put his son through this, and of course, put his presidency, the party, and America through this. It's going to be a rough year of investigations. Now, maybe the American people will be disgusted by the Hunter Biden investigation. They certainly were disgusted when Republicans impeached Bill Clinton. Again, we're talking about human decency here. We're talking about a troubled human being's laptop. And Biden may be a lot more wily than we give him credit for. Even Newt Gingrich, of all people, wrote on his blog praising Biden's political instinct. Newt Gingrich has compared him to Reagan and Eisenhower. He said, like Reagan and Eisenhower, Biden wants to be underestimated. Gingrich went on to say he disagrees with everything Biden has done, but Gingrich says there is no denying that Biden has accomplished a lot during his first 2 years in office. I agree with Newt Gingrich. I disagree with most of what Biden has accomplished, but there's no denying that he has accomplished a lot of things. The next year will not be fun for Joe Biden. But if Warnock beats Walker in Georgia today, it will give Democrats breathing room in the Senate with a 51-49 split. That will marginalize Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema when it comes to nominating and confirming judges. This is important. Right now, according to the New York Times, there are 75 vacancies in our district courts, 9 in the appellate. Ross Barkan, writing in the Times, says that doesn't include all the other judges who will be retiring in the next 2 years. So a Warnock victory today would give Biden an opportunity to retransform our judiciary by fast-tracking confirmations that would counteract the more than 234 judges Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell were able to power through during Trump's 4 years in the Oval Office. Biden can also do a lot with executive orders in the next 2 years. You know, without the Democrats controlling the House, no legislation is going to get passed. But Biden can do a lot with executive orders, but those orders are usually challenged in the courts. So the faster he can get these judges approved, the better chances his executive orders will stick. So, yeah, I think Biden's going to run. And despite his approval rating being in the toilet, I think he can get reelected. I think it will be close, but I think he can get reelected. Obama's approval rating was also in the toilet back in 2012. He got reelected. Now, look, if you listen to this show, you know I'm a leftist and I'm moving further and further to the left. Biden falls way short in my estimation. But the Democratic Party is not run by leftists, at least not yet. And most Americans have a problem with the left. So from a strictly political standpoint, there's a reason Joe Biden defied the odds last month in the midterms and almost held on to the House. Joe Biden did really well in the midterms last month. Whether we like it or not, Joe Biden has racked up a series of legislative accomplishments that he can run on. There's the American Rescue Plan that was passed when he first took office that pumped $1.9 trillion into the economy. That was huge. That was bigger than Obama's big stimulus package when he became president. There's the Inflation Reduction Act that, among other things, makes certain that senior citizens don't pay more than $35 a month for insulin. The Inflation Reduction Act cracks down on tax cheats. They've hired tens of thousands of IRS agents. And it also makes major investments in renewable energy and combating climate change. It falls short on everything, but in an election, it can be spun into gold. Last year, Joe Biden passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill to rebuild our crumbling roads, bridges, and power lines. The CHIPS and Science Act this year marks the first time in my memory America has embarked on an official industrial policy. We have poured billions into the manufacturing of chips while making sure the jobs stay right here in America. Plus, the CHIPS and Science Act pumps billions into scientific research. After Uvalde, Biden passed the first piece of gun control law since the 1994 assault weapons ban. The law pours money into mental health. It's not enough. Last week, Joe Biden called for bringing back the assault weapons ban. There are executive orders he could issue to get the guns off the street. I know. But he can run on all these things. He pulled our troops out of Afghanistan. I think that might be his greatest accomplishment. He ended America's longest war in Afghanistan. And then, of course, he got us involved in Ukraine, which is a disaster. But politically speaking, all of that he can run on. Is COVID over? No. But it feels like it. Gas prices are down to their lowest levels since the invasion of Ukraine. Unemployment is at record lows while inflation is starting to dim. The recession everybody predicted never materialized. In short, we know that none of this is good enough. A lot of what he has done made corporations and the richest 1% more powerful and the middle class poorer. But it is a record to run on. It's a record that can be spun. So I doubt anyone in the party will challenge Joe Biden. And that first primary will be in South Carolina, which set him on his way in 2020, and I think most likely will do it once again in 2024. Moving the first primary to South Carolina, probably not the worst idea. Biden says he wants to make sure this move down to South Carolina will make candidates come right out of the gate, catering more to the needs of the black and southern rural voters that you find in South Carolina, instead of coming out of the gate by catering to the white voters you find in Iowa. About 90% of Iowa residents are white. In South Carolina, 69% are white. Democrats, by moving the first primary to South Carolina, feel they will make deeper inroads into the South overall if their presidential candidates spend more time in South Carolina, in the South, instead of Iowa. We're seeing Georgia. I mean, I think today, if Warnock wins, and it looks like he is, Georgia is purple. This was unimaginable a decade ago. The South may be ripe for the Democratic Party's pickings. So that's one way to win the black and southern votes, moving the first primary to South Carolina. Or, and I know this is insane, you could pass legislation right now that appeals to black and southern rural voters. I know that sounds insane, but, winning isn't about who you make your promises to first. You win big by delivering. Now, earlier I said Biden has a record that he can run on and win on, but it's still going to be a nail-biter. It's still going to be a close election because the Democrats and Biden are not delivering to the 100 million Americans who could vote but stay home on Election Day because they know neither party cares about them. You win big, and this is the problem. You see, unless you're going to get rid of the filibuster, you need to win big. You win big by keeping the promises you already made to these people. You keep the promises you've been making to the American people for the past 50 years. We don't need more promises. We need promises kept. It's how you govern, not how you promise to govern. You want to win big, govern by thinking of blacks and the rural South. Raise the minimum wage. Give voters free tuition at all public universities, free health care, and put the middle class and the poor first by demanding that railway workers get paid sick leave. That is how you win big. On Friday's show, I was highly critical of this new railway contract that Biden and the Democrats are forcing railway workers to sign. Some Democrats wrote to me and said, well, what else was Biden supposed to do? To which I responded, a lot. Look, this is a no-brainer. If you want to stop the spread of COVID, you make paid sick leave non-negotiable. People show up to work when they're sick if staying home means not being able to pay their bills, which is why, according to Pew Charitable Trusts, 17 states here in America have mandated paid sick leave. And while 78% of private sector employees have paid sick leave, 33 million Americans don't. Of those 33 million Americans without paid sick leave, of those are the men and women who work our railways. The people we entrust to transport a 2 to 3 mile stretch of railway cars carrying hazardous chemicals, oil, food, and chlorine to keep our water potable. The people who are responsible for keeping us safe from a railroad disaster. These people are overworked to exhaustion. And when they get sick, they don't get paid. When a family member gets sick, they don't get paid. When they need to see a doctor, they don't get paid. This is the contract Biden and the Democrats insist was good enough. Joe Biden calls himself the most pro-union president in American history. Then prove it. He never got the PRO Act passed. He still hasn't gotten more money for the National Labor Relations Board. They're going to run out of money by February. And that's why Amazon and Starbucks workers have voted to go union, but because the NLRB is underfunded, Amazon and Starbucks still haven't recognized the unions because our NLRB is outgunned. Democrats say they are pro-union. Well, you must do more than just say it, because Republicans are the most pro-management party in American history. They fight for corporations, and they are winning. They are killing our unions. So who is on the side of labor if it's not Democrats? Who is fighting for the worker? Doesn't feel like the Democrats are. But the Democratic leadership needs to understand is it's not good enough to say you're fighting for the workers. You must also fight the corporations. We need a president and a party that punishes corporations for punishing their employees. Instead of taking donations from these corporations, the Democrats should be fining them. We also need unions that fight for the workers. I can't believe the number of railway union chiefs who praised Joe Biden, saying he did the best he could. You fight for the workers. You don't force a contract on them. You take that fight to the American people, and you make the case against people like Warren Buffett and all the other railroad owners who earn billions while paying their workers scraps. You call out their greed, because that's all this is, greed. How corporations pay their workers is a fight as important, if not more important, than the fight for Ukraine. And while the fighting in Ukraine is far from over, Biden never gives up. He counsels patience when it comes to Ukraine. But when it comes to railway workers, Biden needed that contract immediately. Pencils down, no more negotiating. We need a contract right now. Why? Because there could be a strike. The entire economy could shut down, and we can't have that. Any economy where workers must choose between insulin and food should be shut down. What Biden should have done is he should have kept a tentative agreement going, and the presidents and the Democrats should have stood up for the railway workers and taken the fight to the railway companies, shamed Warren Buffett. And maybe after they put up a big fight, they don't win. Maybe after the Democrats take the fight to the railway companies and they discover that they just don't have the votes in the Senate, they lose. They cave. But at least the battle lines haven't been blurred. At least the workers and the voters know that the Republicans are on the side of management and Democrats are on the side of labor. You can't be on both sides. You can't straddle the management-labor divide. Pick a side. The Republicans have. They've picked management. The Democrats have to stop saying labor and management are a team. They're not a team. Labor and management are not on the same side. That's what neoliberal hack Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine told Christian Smalls, the head of the Amazon labor union, over the summer. Tim Kaine, Democrat, Hillary's vice president, said, I don't know why you're beating up on Amazon. It's a good company. And why can't you see labor and management working as a team? No, Amazon, first of all, is a bad company. Its business model is hiring and firing and working people until they're completely burnt out. And most importantly, labor and management are not on the same team. Democrats, if they're not going to get rid of the filibuster, have to win with landslides, and they're never going to win with landslides until they declare themselves on team labor. Like I said, stop taking donations from corporations. Fine them. That's how you take their money. You fine them. Now, a few clarifications on the nearly 120,000 railway workers and the contract that the federal government is forcing on these 12 unions to sign. More than half the workers rejected the contract. More than half the workers rejected this contract. This is not what the workers want. It's what their feckless union leaders are agreeing to. See, this is why elections in America are so close, because the Democratic Party straddles the labor management divide. You can't play both sides. Voters have long memories, and Democrats can't keep coming around every 2 years insisting that they're on the side of workers. Workers see their shrinking paychecks. They see how they're working longer hours for less money and fewer benefits. And you know who the workers end up blaming? Not the Republicans. They blame the Democrats because the Republicans never lied to them. The Republicans never pretended they were pro-union. That's why the Democrats don't win big. That's why they just lost the House. Do you really think workers believe that Hakeem Jeffries, the Wall Street bag man who is the new Democratic House leader, do you think anybody who works for a living believes Hakeem Jeffries is on their side? The Lever reports that people should subscribe to The Lever, David Sirota's publication. The Lever reports that giving railway workers 7 days of paid sick leave would cost the railroad industry $321 million a year. $321 million a year. This year, the major railway companies made $7 billion in profits and paid out dividends of $1.8 billion to shareholders. The Lever goes on to write that the CEOs of the 5 major railroad companies earned $200 million in salary over the past 3 years, while spending nearly $200 billion on stock buybacks which accomplish nothing other than artificially boosting the price of the railway stocks. This is why Warren Buffett loves owning railroads. $200 billion in the past 3 years was spent to buy back the stock. Now, that does nothing for the company. They're not buying new equipment when they buy back stocks. They're not investing in their workers. They're spending $200 billion to purchase their own shares just so the value of the shares go up. That's not how you are supposed to invest your profits. You're not supposed to invest in your company by purchasing more stock. You invest in your company through research and development, delivering a better product, and most importantly, a happier workforce. This is pure greed. And by the way, up until 1982, up until Ronald Reagan was president, stock buybacks were illegal. $200 billion the railways have spent in 3 years, $200 billion in buybacks over a 3-year period, but no paid sick leave. Open secrets. How much was it? $120 million? $321 million to give workers paid sick leave. But they have $200 billion in stock buybacks. They can spend $200 billion in stock buybacks. Open Secrets reports that the railway industry donated $3.3 million in the last midterm cycle to Congress. That's how you buy their votes, with just $3.3 million. Boy, they really are cheap whores. They have $200 billion for stock buybacks, and they're able to buy these Washington, D.C. whores for $3.3 million. Total, not each, total. Well, who has the power in this? Congress and the president. That's because of the Railway Labor Act. It's a nearly 100-year-old law giving our government the power to enforce a contract on the railway workers and railway management. Railway management as well. According to the Railway Labor Act, when workers and management can't agree on anything, the President of the United States, through an executive order, and this is what happened, the President establishes an emergency board. That's what Biden established to handle the negotiations. And then that emergency board makes recommendations which, through an act of Congress, force the workers and management to agree to the contract. And that's what Biden did. He established an emergency board. Marty Walsh, his labor secretary, led the negotiations, and this contract belongs to Joe Biden. These are his recommendations. Now, yes, he has to negotiate with Congress to get it passed, but there's no reason Biden and the Democrats couldn't have forced a tentative agreement, and then Biden and the Democrats could lobby the American people, go on national television like Roosevelt would, and remind the American people of the gross inequalities. Go over what management makes versus what the workers do. This is how you fight for workers and unions, and this is how you win with Roosevelt-era landslides. Instead, the American people, the American worker, were all bamboozled into being afraid of a strike, like it's the apocalypse. And Biden and the Democrats want credit for averting a strike. Like the worst thing that could happen is a strike. Republicans, pay attention to the debt ceiling. In a week or two, the Republicans are going to hold the debt ceiling. They're going to hold the government hostage and maybe shut the government down over the debt ceiling. The Republicans are willing to have our Treasury bonds downgraded, which they were when Republicans shut the government down. I think it was like 10 years ago. I think our bonds were downgraded. Republicans have shut down our government. Newt Gingrich shut down our government. But Democrats are too terrified of a railway strike. This is why the Democrats don't win. This is why they don't win big. The Republicans, big swings. They will shut the government down, and they mean it. And yet, the party that's supposed to be on the side of labor is terrified of a railway strike. Is a strike painful? Yes. But we need more strikes. What happens during a strike? What happens is management is reminded of who does all the work and who really has all the power if labor ever gets around to exercising that power. You know why the French live longer than Americans do? They strike. They shut their country down. And by the way, with all the strikes in France, their GDP is just fine. Their corporations are doing just fine. Because when workers are happy, the customers are happy, and happy customers mean, what's that word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, bigger profits. Bigger profits. You see, you don't grow a company by squeezing profits out of the bottom line. That's how you kill a company. And it's precisely why most companies are racking up record debt. Despite the stock market doing a little bit better, despite the economy doing better, more corporations are not, because they're all in debt. They bought other companies. They buy their competition. Instead of competing with their competition, they buy their competition in direct violation of every antitrust law known to mankind. And now they have all this debt. So instead of growing profits by investing in the worker, they grow profits by downsizing, by firing people, because it's easier to fire everyone than it is to compete. This is Chris Licht. He's a golden boy. He's the new head of CNN. He was brought in to save CNN because he has this track record working first for CBS News, and then he went over to the Colbert Show. He's an executive, a television executive, which means he gets paid a lot of money to do nothing. And now he's been brought into CNN, which is being victimized by all these mergers, right? CNN, Time Warner, then they sell it to AT&T, and now they're the Discovery Channel. CNN is profitable. CNN is doing fine, but they keep getting bought. And when they get bought, the parent company has debt that has to be serviced. So Chris Licht was brought in to CNN, and CNN isn't doing good enough. It made $956.8 million in profits last year. It dipped below $1 billion, and that has the Discovery Channel, their new owners, upset. And golden boy Chris Licht is supposed to make $1.1 billion in profits this fiscal year, but he's on track to come up about $100 million short. So he must deliver on his promise to bring in $1.1 billion in profits. So what does he do? What's he doing this year? Does he dream up new revenue streams? Does he do something creative? Does he improve the quality of CNN or CNN headline news so that the ratings go up and he can charge more for advertising? No, that's too much work for a golden boy. Instead, he fires 10% of the staff. There's a bloodbath going on right now over at CNN. See, that's the new business model. CNN merges, they get bought out, you rack up debt. And even though CNN is making about $1 billion a year in profits, it's not good enough. So we have to fire 10% of the staff and squeeze more work out of the terrified staffers over at CNN who are still left there, afraid of losing their job. This is the business model for CNN because the government could have blocked the AT&T purchase of Time Warner. They didn't. They could have blocked CNN getting bought by the Discovery Channel. But no, that's the new business model. Just buy up the competition. Don't come up with new ideas to beat the competition. Buy the competition, rack up debt, and squeeze profits by firing all your workers, like Chris Licht is doing over at CNN. Very creative, Chris, firing people. Genius. You're a regular Brandon Tartikoff. That is the business model for the railways, which is why Warren Buffett owns so much stock in railways. That's the business model for the railway workers. Lay them off and make the workers who are left work harder for less money. In the past 3 years, 35,000 railway workers have been fired, and profits are up. Profits are up because of new efficiencies. And by efficiencies, I mean making the remaining railway workers work longer hours for much less pay. Thanks to something called precision scheduling, railway workers are on call 365 days a week, which means they can't plan a vacation, a weekend. They can't visit their doctor without worrying about getting a last-minute call saying you have 90 minutes to get here and start working. And if you're not here, you get a demerit. This new contract shortens what is called the worker rest cycle. And in the name of efficiency, railway workers are assigned one shift that will start in the morning, and then their next shift starts at night. And they are expected to adjust their circadian rhythms with the needs of the company. And they're doing dangerous work. Like, they have our lives in their hands. Might be a good idea to treat them kindly. Railway workers are forced to sleep 3 to a hotel room on overnight stays, cheap rundown hotel rooms, with some of them saying they throw their clothes out for fear of bringing bed bugs back to their family. There's nothing in this new contract forced on the railway workers to prevent more downsizing. Downsizing isn't efficiency. It's just lazy and uncreative, like Chris Licht, the golden boy running CNN. He's a golden boy. When corporations fire hundreds of staffers, they're not getting rid of dead weight. If getting rid of dead weight was their primary goal, the first person Chris Licht over at CNN would be firing right now would be Chris Licht. Golden boy. So Biden and the Democrats, they didn't have to force this contract vote. How about a tentative agreement? No strike, but a president and a Democratic Party that uses this moment to draw attention to the plight, not just of the railway workers, but of all workers. Turning your back on the railway workers is bad politics, and it's bad for our democracy. It's bad politics because it allows faux populists in the Republican Party to posture and pretend to be on the side of labor. Senators Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, John Cornyn got to stand in the well of the Senate last week and vote against the bill because it didn't provide for paid sick leave. It was posturing. Marco Rubio said he didn't want to abandon the worker. He didn't approve of the bill. It was convenient because the Republicans knew the contract was going to pass. But they got to grandstand and give the Republican Party fake street cred with the workers. It's bad politics. It's bad. It's bad politics. And it's bad for our republic. It's bad for democracy. You see, Republicans like Hawley, Cornyn, Cruz, and Rubio, they pretend to be on the side of labor. When they can't help labor, they pretend to be on the side of labor, but they're not on the side of labor. They're fascists, and fascists hate labor. They hate unions. If we're going to save this republic, Joe Biden, we need the unions. They are the muscle. See, the fascists have their muscle. The fascists have bikers, retired cops, sick veterans, mentally ill veterans, and they have their militia. And they've always had, fascists have always had that element. But it's the workers, it's the unions who stand up to the fascists. If you keep gutting the unions, Joe Biden, there's nobody to stand up to the fascists. We need the railway workers. They are the guardians of our democracy. We need the Teamsters because they can shut the economy down. That's power. That is how you save a democracy. It's the workers who can shut the economy down. And the way we save our democracy is we make sure our democracy works for the railway workers and the Teamsters. Because when they lose faith in the government, then we have nobody to protect it. It's the railway workers who are going to protect the government. It's the unions that are going to protect our government. Without workers, there is no republic. Without unions, there's nobody to save our Constitution. And to save our Constitution, to save our republic, we all must make sacrifices. And if that means an occasional inconvenience like a strike, suck it up. A strike is not a natural disaster. The way Biden and the media framed the contract negotiations between railway workers and management is, we need to avert a strike. A strike will shut the economy down. It will be the worst thing to happen to our country. It will be like a Category 5 hurricane smashing into Christmas. All that talk frames the debate. It creates the illusion that the unions hold all the cards, and it's up to the unions to prevent a strike. No, it's up to management to give the unions what they deserve to prevent a strike. It has been estimated that a railroad strike would cost our economy $2 billion a day. Wow, that sounds like it would do a lot of damage to the economy if there were a railway strike. Sounds to me like the railway workers have a lot of power. Sounds to me like management should make the workers happy, give them paid sick leave, because, railway workers, those are one of the few jobs management can't threaten to ship overseas. Seems to me railway workers, if empowered, look, a strike is not a massive earthquake. It's good for the country. It's good for the working class. It lets the boss know who's boss. You can't have a vibrant middle class without unions, and you can't have unions without management terrified of a strike. Too many people died for the 5-day work week. And if the American people must go without, then too bad. It's called a shared sacrifice. If there has to be a strike, we go without. Like I said, if Republicans are willing to shut down the government to protect the rich, we need a Democratic Party willing to shut down the economy to protect the worker. There are more of us than there are of them. A strike might be painful, but the railway workers don't have paid sick leave. Unions are dying and Americans are working longer for less pay. You say a strike means you would have to go without? Well, more than half this country can't come up with $1,000 for an emergency. We're already going without. If Republicans are willing to shut the government down this month, the Democrats should be willing to shut the economy down. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.